Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare.
I thought the kid was dead, and the moment I saw him slumped in his seat is still etched in my mind. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Theme park workers of Reddit. What are your horror stories?
Number 1.
The scariest moment I had was when lightning struck a utility pole below me. My position on the ride was about 50 feet up, knocking out power to my ride and forcing me and my supervisors to unload the ride in the middle of a lightning storm.
Number 2.
Many moons ago, I worked for a major theme park here in Orlando. I worked at a log flume ride. Now here's the thing folks, there are rules to riding rides. If someone who works there tells you to ride a certain way, there will be no issues and you will be safe. If you ignore those rules, bad things could happen. This one guest was riding the flume ride, and instead of sitting all the way back and holding on to the handrails as they were directed to do, they scooted all the way forward and wrapped their legs and arms around the seat in front of them right before they went down the final drop. The seat broke and the person was jerked back suddenly. They broke their back.
Number 3.
A guy who was very upset that I wouldn't let his kid who was a foot under the height requirement ride. I told him no early in the day, but one of my coworkers let the kid ride while I was on break. The family comes up later and the father, who was noticeably drunk, jumps 2 gates and over the tracks to threaten me with a knife. I called security and he ran.
Number 4.
I was at Hollywood Horror Night, and this zombie was trying to scare me, but ended up grabbing me, and tripped me, and he caught me but scratched my arm really badly and accidentally spit on me. I ended up spraining my ankle, and a pyramid head from Silent Hill ended up pretty much carrying me to the health center. That was a shitty, but memorable night.
Number 5.
For a spring semester I was an intern at Walt Disney World. I worked in a fast food restaurant in the Magic Kingdom. Basically you're at the happiest place on earth but serving the angriest people on earth because they're all exhausted and hungry. Anyways, one day I was working in the front of the house on a particularly stormy day. And like most people of America know, it rains almost every day in Florida in the warmer months. Well, customers like to complain when the weather is bad and ruining their vacations. I get it, I guess. But some take it to the extremes. Now on the particular day, the dining room was packed with people just trying to hide out from the rain. I got a call on my radio saying code V, which is the code for vomit. Being an intern, I got to clean it up. Luckily they have the stuff that looks like pencil shavings that just soak it up and then you just sweep it. I went to the table and this poor little girl was in a high chair and the throw up was literally all over her high chair, the table, and the floor. So I get it all cleaned up, and ask the manager if I can run to the nearest gift shop and get her a new t-shirt. Disney is awesome like that. I come back and no joke 15 minutes later I get another code V. Same table. This time it was just on the table, but I noticed it was not primarily in front of the little girl. I don't question it and clean it again. I started talking to the mother, who was very overweight and quite older, and then came to the realization that it was the mother both times who had thrown up. Not the daughter. And that she didn't know it was coming the first time, and that second time she felt it, but didn't want to lose her spot at her table. So basically I learned that day that people will do anything to remain a lazy person.
Number 6.
I was visiting Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio and was stopped right at the gate of the Chaos ride since all of the cars were full. Little did I know this would secure front row seats for the best story of the entire trip. A man who had gotten on the ride just before me had placed his video camera on the operator's booth so he wouldn't have to take it with him on the ride and risk breaking/losing it. As the ride is starting up, one of the operators notices it and gets the bright idea to start filming, thinking, well, this will be a nice memory that the father and son won't have to put any work into preserving it all. She was wrong. Halfway through the ride the owner of the camera loses his lunch and breakfast and what looks like dinner from the night before. Seriously, this guy had a lot in there and a lot came spewing out of him. Before the operator with the camera realizes what has happened, he has stopped barfing and she quietly closes the camera and puts it away as the ride comes slowly to a stop. The man apologizes for the mess, gathers his camera and things and leaves in embarrassment. None of the operators say a word about the fact that it is on film. All I can imagine is him sitting his family down to watch the home movie of their trip to Cedar Point and him going, I don't remember filming this. Oh God. Oh God, no. As his entire family sees the recorded history of his weak stomach.
Number 7.
My story was the only true time I was scared while at work. We had a ride breakdown, surprisingly normal, However, the train was stuck in such a way that we were unable to reach 2 rows of the train. It just so happened that in one of those rows was a lady that was having a severe panic or asthma attack. Our first aid team took over when she got off, and couldn't calm down or get her breathing under control. Luckily, Mom was nearby and had an inhaler. The ride was a flying coaster, so the guests were laying on their backs while stuck, and I was able to toss the inhaler and land it right on her chest. Between Mom, first aid personnel, and myself, we were able to get her calmed down while we waited for maintenance to pull the train into place. The whole ordeal only took 10 to 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. People stuck on rides always seem to think their lives are in danger, when in reality they're safer in the seat than I am standing on the catwalk next to them. But this woman was the only time I felt someone was in real danger, and it scared the shit out of me.
Number 8.
I have experienced a couple of incidents, mostly just people trying to attack me if they don't get their will, but the most horrible thing I've encountered is also the best thing I encountered. I was working in Legoland in Denmark, and I was at a ride that was just a train. We would be 2 on shift, and I was standing at the line waiting for my partner to come back with the train. While I stood there and waited, a guest from the line called me over and said that there was a boy who wasn't breathing. I quickly ran over to the boy and saw his father completely frozen and crying his heart out. I yelled to the food stand across the path and told them to call the emergency crew. After there went some seconds, I decided I couldn't wait for them and started to give him mouth to mouth. I had the kid out a solid minute and was starting to shit myself when he slowly started to wake up and breath again. Both me and the father just sank down in relief that the boy survived. Then the emergency crew came and got the father and boy to a hospital. The next week they came again, and I was thanked by the boy's whole family, and they said they were extremely grateful for what I've done. They tried to offer me all kinds of stuff, but I refused and said I was happy with just the boy being alive.
Number 9.
Worked at Kings Island on a ride called Diamondback. One day the train came back, and this kid, tilde 10 or 12 years old, was completely unconscious. He was slumped over in his seat, being held up by his mother. For those of you who don't know, the seats on Diamondback are lap bars, so this kid was literally like folded in half, slumped over. Also, the ride is smooth as silk, so he didn't hit his head or anything. Anyway, we immediately call 911. Inside the park, any park telephones route to the park's first aid station when you call 911. Meanwhile, all we can legally do as teens who weren't medically trained was offer a subpar first aid kit, 2 gauze pads, a box of band-aids, and some other miscellaneous items, and water. I had to stand there completely helpless watching his parents try to wake him up. They said he passed out while going up the first hill, 230 feet, and they had to hold him up to keep from flopping around throughout the entire ride. When the first aid cart got there, they lifted him off the seat and onto a stretcher and wheeled him off the ride, and he regained consciousness near the entrance of the ride. My area supervisor asked us all if we were okay to keep working and said if we needed to we can all go home. It was terrifying. I thought the kid was dead, and the moment I saw him slumped in his seat is still etched in my mind. That memory isn't the worst part though. Standing there, legally unable to do anything even if I knew how, while the mother was crying, just trying to get a response while the father tried to keep it together for the boy's sister, is the most haunting memory I have, and I think it will be for a while.
Number 10.
I used to work at a small water park where there were some dry rides up the southern end. There was this 8-year-old kid just being a little shit, pushing in line, climbing up the slide of the playground, knocking other kids' hats off, that sort of bullshit. I warned him several times, then asked him to leave, but he doesn't. I go and ask my supervisor what to do, and he says get the scissors. He means to cut his wristband, without which he can't go on any rides. I call him over, and he surprisingly complies, and before he can react, I grab his wrist and cut off his wristband. Naturally, he starts crying like a bitch. He runs off to get his mom, and she comes back about 15 minutes later and comes and talks to me, without her son. She asks why I did what I did, and I explain the situation to her, and how it is standard procedure. She nods and understands, and knows that her son is a demon child. She leaves, but, lo and behold, 10 minutes later here he comes. He tries to cut in line again, and I stop him, and ask him to go back to his mom. His first reaction was to punch me in the balls. Oh shit, no he didn't. My supervisor sees and immediately calls security. Apparently his mom saw too, and she came running. She doesn't say anything to her child, but goes and tells the supervisor to scare him. When security arrives, 30 seconds later, they grab the kid, whirl him around and handcuff him. He's shitting himself at this point. They grab him and take him off in their golf cart. A few minutes later they return, and the kid has obviously been crying, and hard. He jumps out of the cart and runs straight to his mom, who grabs him and walks out. People watching were stunned, but amazingly, and I shit you not, some applauded as they went off. Best day of work I had at that place.
Number 11.
I once worked at a water park as a lifeguard supervisor, and it was an everyday thing that someone shit or threw up in the pools. We even called it a code brown, so we weren't straight up saying yeah, another turd in the kiddie pool. Another time we had a riptide water ride where people could ride bodyboards like a big wave, and while I was talking to another guard I heard the whistle go off like there was an emergency. As I approached, a guard told me that there was a nail in someone's foot. I thought he meant someone stubbed their toe and their nail pushed back into their toe, but it was an 8-year-old girl who had stepped on a 4-inch screw left over from the maintenance the ride had recently undergone. Right into the heel. As I saw it I got a little lightheaded, but that is what I was trained to do, so as I picked her up and pulled her out of the water she moved her foot and it started to come out, but it was still in there a good 3 inches. I put a latex glove on it and told her it'd be okay as I called for paramedics. Her damn brothers came up and said that she was gonna ruin their time if they had to leave and I had to tell them to get away. When the paramedics came they picked her up to put her on the stretcher, and when they did, that good old latex glove slid off her foot and got hooked on the screw in the foot, causing her, what I believed by her screams, excruciating pain. Never found out what happened after that, but she should have sued. Big payday.
Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.